Hello and welcome back, guys. Okay, so I was not really certain I'm gonna do this week. I mean, the episode from the trailer did seem like it was pretty Cooper-centric, and in the end, that just seemed like it does not add to the overall major arc of the season, but it did somehow add to it. Let's start off by talking the major highlights of the episode, the points I'm gonna discuss over the course of this video, and then go into the details. So number 1, the extremely silly and irritatingly stupid Liz-Katarina plot device that continued on this episode, and it even got worse. Number 2, the episode was Harold Cooper-centric, which seems to be a trend this season. Gonna talk about that in detail. But number 3, we're getting mixed signals about who Raymond Reddington really is. There's a good chance Ilya Koslov is off the table. He's not Ilya Koslov. There's a great chance as well we've seen Ilya Koslov in present day. Number 4, the title of the episode along with similar episodes from previous seasons might clue us in on one thing or the other, possibly who Reddington is. Gonna talk about that in full detail as well. Number 5, Cooper and Red together, the conversations, the dynamic between these two, the relationship that they both have together. It never ceases to amaze me how good the writing for these two separately is, and how it gets even better when they are in a scene together. And finally, number 6, 2 favorite moments on this episode, and both involving Red, one about a statement that he made, and the other about a choice of action and the repercussions of said action. Both of them, in my opinion, were pretty powerful scenes, and both of them, at the same time, managed to be pretty hilarious scenes. With that being said, let's talk about the details, and not necessarily in the same order of the list I just made over here. So the episode starts with 1989 Kuwait City. Carol Cooper and Daniel Sutton are ambushed. Now, that story from Kuwait that connects with the present-day story when it comes to Cooper. In present day, he gets a message from a CIA outpost in Iran about the very man whom Cooper believed was dead and long gone. Yet another ghost from the past situation here. Love the whole idea of kind of giving us a parallel, to Katarina. She was believed to be dead, she rose from the ashes, thought dead but is still alive. That's the same situation over here with Daniel Hutton. Now, early on, you start thinking, this guy that Cooper is heading to Iran to meet, Daniel Hutton, he's probably not who he claims he is. He's probably not Daniel Hutton at all. But then later on, when we meet Daniel Hutton, we start realizing, okay, you know what, he's definitely who he claims he is, but he's got a vendetta against Harold. You've got the moment that he laughs in the car, telling Harold, maybe this time around, they'll take you instead. You could tell he's extremely bad news. I even thought for a moment that he is the very same person that he claimed he escaped from, and that kind of got confirmed, or definitely got confirmed actually, by his latter conversation with Cooper. It became too obvious too fast, but in the end, it was a solid story. I don't believe this episode was meant to be about the mystery, because a lot of it was pretty obvious. I think it was more about finding out more about Cooper, understanding Cooper, knowing what makes this guy really tick. But speaking about another point on my list that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there is the fact that this episode, it was pretty Cooper-centric. Now, one thing I've got to admit I love about this season so far is how it's focusing on different people on every single episode, with minimal focus on the soap opera that's Lizzie's life. I mean, there's still some focus over there, but it's not the overall focus. She brings a lot of drama, a lot of soap opera to the table, and that's kind of being avoided a little bit. The first episode of the season was pretty focused on Red himself. The second episode was more focused on Katarina, with a lot of Red and a lot of Dom, but nonetheless, it was more about Katarina. The third hour, that was pretty Aram-centric, pretty amazing as well. He's dealing with the loss of Samar, he's finding something that is akin to Rebound, or possibly a future love interest. Then this fourth hour of the season kicks in, and it's pretty Cooper-centric, and I love that. But these are 2 out of 6 on my list, so the third point happens to be all about the title of the episode, which happens to be Kuwait. And we're used to episode titles that include a number and the name of a blacklister. However, though, there is this other trend that's been ongoing for a few seasons now, 5 seasons to be precise. There's always this one episode that's got a title that does not match with the rest of the episodes of the season. That was Cape May on Season 3, Requiem on Season 4, Ruin on 5, and Razvet on 6, and now Kuwait on Season 7. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking these episodes put together might all contain clues on one thing or the other, or everything that we're looking for. This trend, and as I just mentioned, started with Season 3. The very first season, we heard of Katarina Rostova and found out that she was Lizzie's mother. Cape May is the first episode we ever met Katarina, even if part of a prolonged red hallucination, but we did meet Katarina on that episode. Katarina herself, she's a common denominator between 4 out of these 5 episodes, but there's also a common denominator between the first of these episodes and the third, the only one that had nothing to do with Katarina, which is basically all about grief. On the Cape May episode, we had a grieving Red over Lizzie's alleged death, and on Ruin, out of Season 5, we've got a grieving Lizzie over the death of Tom Keene. And in both cases, both of them did move away from everyone that they know, very far away. But yeah though, trying my best over here to keep the arguments about Katarina and Liz, that silly arc, that plot device, to a later point on this video. So I'm gonna talk about my favorite 2 moments on this episode. Like I stated before, they are both involving Red, the first of which happens to be about that statement. That's my favorite statement for this week's episode. Even the Magnificent 7 had 7. Slim chance of survival, impossible odds, this will be fun. Let's not forget that besides his attitude, his statement being funny, also indicative of how he doesn't leave a man behind, but nonetheless funny, there's of course the reference to the Magnificent 7, a pretty solid classic movie. But there's still another one. This week, I was watching the newest episode of This Is Us, and there was the statement made by Nikki to Kevin, "You have the weirdest relationships with people." And given the kind of help that Raymond secured on this episode, and the reason he gave for securing it, I'd say Raymond is the one who's got the weirdest relationships with people out there. And he definitely knows the weirdest people as well. Drone strike from a gaming store and whatnot. Let's though talk about Liz before we move on to the identity of Raymond Reddington. The entire thing with Liz still not doubting for a moment, or questioning for a moment, the motives of her new neighbor. That's going to be the new thing I complain about this season. I usually complain about the acting for Boone, but the writing for her is now even worse. What makes it even worse is that Liz gives it all up. Those men are there for my protection. I need protection from my mother. I mean, seriously, Miss FBI Profiler. Worst plot device this series has come up with so far. A question that keeps nagging me over here is if Liz believes that she needs protection from her mother, that there is a possibility that she would come for her or after her, profiler or not. Why would she have zero suspicions of the woman who suddenly appeared in her life with a story that's all about separation and trouble with her own daughter? A story that she's telling that's still hitting the nail right on the head. On another note, if the men out there are there for her protection, parked across the street as she states, and they're protecting her from her mother, did they not notice Katarina going in or out, this new face, this all-new person? Just take a moment to think about it. If these guys are FBI, they would definitely have suspicions about that new face in town or in the building to be more precise, and if they are Raymond's men, you would think that he would have filled them in on who Katarina is and possibly what she looks like. So we've got the arc with the nanny, we've got Katarina listening in on the conversation between Liz and the nanny, and we've got Katarina masquerading as an agent herself. There are 2 things about that scene. First and foremost, Katarina is definitely going in and out of the building, so we cannot make that argument about the people watching over Liz. The second thing here, though, it's all about the motive. The objective here is to keep the nanny away from Liz and Agnes. Makes you wonder what Katarina's endgame is. She's got the key to the apartment, she's got access to the apartment, she does not need to go in just because of Agnes. So what is her endgame? I think there's the possibility of a later abduction of Agnes, Alexander Kirk style, but there's also the possibility she's trying to convince Liz, hey, I'm a good mother, before she actually tells her, hey, I'm your mother. But let us though not forget over here that Liz is being written to be so gullible, still clueless, still not doubting this woman, calling her first thing when the nanny goes back on their agreement, asking her to take care of Agnes, and like she knows her from Adam as well. So yeah, this is the shittiest and crappiest plot device since the invention of plot devices. But let us though talk one final topic on this video, and it's all about Red's identity. Now we've got the conversation between Cooper and Red discussing Raymond's alleged true identity. Ilya Koslov did not accept that twist, thought Cooper would just leave it to himself. Cooper as well poses the perfect question. I mean, possibly to send the audience a message, but it's a question I was thinking about the moment that Ilya Koslov or Raymond Reddington started talking about the situation in Kuwait. How could you know about that? How could an Ilya Koslov version of Red know about the whole Kuwait ordeal? And we've got Red's response as well, fueling that fire. I know because I know. Every single word that Cooper said over there made perfect sense. There are a lot of things that the real Raymond Reddington could have told Katarina, a lot of things that in return she could have told Koslov. But this story though, it's not that kind of story you would expect he would have told Katarina, either as a lover or as a spy. But this though would mean that Raymond Reddington is either the real Raymond Reddington or someone that Raymond Reddington knew during that period of time, someone who worked with him, was a good friend and a close friend to him, and that would make more sense than, Red is Katarina or Red is a Russian spy or Red is Katarina's brother. I think this makes the most sense. But just so we're clear over here, every statement made by Reddington to Cooper on the flight forth and the flight back, these are just in no way confirmation he's not Reddington, or he is or was Ilya Koslov. He has never admitted, not even to Cooper on this episode, that he is Ilya Koslov. All he stated is he had another identity, which could mean Ilya or someone completely different, if we're looking at a literal take on his statements, but then there is the metaphorical take as well. Could always be about him being a different Raymond Reddington, the good, by the rules, by the book Red, versus this version, which is still good by the way, just not so much by the book or by the rules. This would, by the way, also apply to a statement about being a more interesting Reddington than Reddington ever was. That old man, that old me, that was not an interesting person. He was quite boring. Rules are boring. Being by the book is boring. I'm a more interesting person. Anyway, though, the conversations between Reddington and Cooper are not the only conversations on this episode that do shed doubt on the identity of Reddington, him being Koslov. There is the fact that Katarina wants to find Koslov to figure out what she needs to figure out. The way she talks at the end of the episode about finding him, figuring out things through him, that makes it sound like him and Raymond are not really one and the same person. That brings us to the possibility that Ilya Koslov might still be alive. He's most probably alive actually, and that means that we might have seen him before, and I'm starting to think Raymond's friend from the finale of Season 6, the stranger, he's most probably Ilya Koslov. So what brought these two together? That's something we need to figure out, we need to theorize on. I'm probably gonna start thinking of a scenario all the way from here to next week's video, and I'm gonna discuss it next week. But until then, let me know in the comments down below what your favorite moments of this episode happen to be. Let me know if you enjoyed this episode and who you think Raymond Reddington really is. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a new video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, The Blacklist or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in to this video and have a great day.